All right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm excited today to introduce you to Christine Street, and she is the owner and founder of a company called Chocolate and Steel. And she's a jewelry designer, and she makes and designs and handcrafts all of her jewelry from reclaimed silver. So we're excited to have her here today to talk about her story, to share some insights into being a mom business owner. And I know you're going to learn a ton from Christine. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of how Chocolate and Steel came to be?
Sure. When I started Chocolate and Steel, it was actually completely hobby based. I worked in retail. I was a store manager for Anthropologie for 10 years. And although at that point maybe it was more like 8. And I was doing beaded work, and I would make these necklaces, wear them as I would, working, and customers would stop me and say, "Oh, where can I find that?" So I made this, we don't sell it here. And they started giving me their phone number, like, call me, I'd like to buy it, because this was a bit before the days of email. No, people didn't really use email that much. So my husband had encouraged me, you should build a website. And so I did. It was a horrible website because I built it myself. And really just like cut and paste pictures with a price and like contact me for details in a way. And I ended up getting pregnant, and when I was on maternity leave, again with the encouragement of my husband, he said, you should really try and push that. Well, I said, well, I can probably make some extra money while I'm on maternity leave, and it worked out pretty well. I did make some extra money, and he said, I think you should really put in some extra time into that. And I think it was about like 6 or 8 months later. I had already gone back to work, which was really difficult and newborn. Besides just being exhausted, I missed him a lot. So you get like 2 weeks of vacation, and so I took those 2 weeks and decided I'm going to work at Chocolate and Steel for 2 weeks and see what I could do. And I ended up making just as much money in those 2 weeks as I had at my job.
Wow.
I decided, all right, this is it. I'm going to make it happen. And so I left my job, and I left sort of part-time. Like, I still worked a couple of nights. It's retail. You can work some late night shifts and whatnot. So I still had that as a backup. And it took about a year for me to get pretty busy. I think it was like the following holiday season, December, that I had asked for the entire December off, so I could dedicate it to making jewelry.
Oh, wow.
And they gave it to me because I'd worked there for so long. They don't typically give you that kind of time off. And after that, my husband was like, I think you shouldn't go back. I think it's like having that to fall back on is kind of holding you back. And he was absolutely right. I needed to just go forward and not think that, well, in case this doesn't work out,
right,
I've got to fall back. And that sort of motivated me to work harder and make it happen. So I'd say it took almost 2 years for me to make the salary that I was making at my old job, which was tough because I had a new baby as well. Obviously expenses were more, but I was so much happier. I was so much happier doing that. I was able to, go to the park with my son during the day, put him down for a nap, and I'd be so inspired. I'd come up with new designs, and it really worked for me at the time. And I did a lot of work at night. We put him to bed, and then I'd work until like 1 o'clock in the morning, which again works for me. I'm kind of a night owl.
I am too.
Yeah. I think with a baby, your sleep schedule gets all rearranged, and you kind of learn how to be flexible.
Yes, for sure. So you tested the idea before you actually just went cold turkey. So you had your baby, you had your son, and then you decided to take those 2 weeks off after you went back to work, but you took it as sort of vacation. And then in that 2 weeks, you just developed jewelry and started selling more.
Yeah, I really worked on a website. At that point, I think it was around that time that I found Etsy, and that's where I had said I tried to make this website myself and realized building an e-commerce website by myself was very difficult, and it looked awful. It wasn't really to the standard that I wanted it to be. So at that point, I found Etsy, and that was really early in Etsy's life. It was like 2006, end of 2006, and I actually launched my shop in 2007 in the beginning. So I basically used them as my interface for e-commerce, but I had a website you would go to, and then it would take you to Etsy to shop on it. And I had great success with them in the beginning. They definitely helped launch my career.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about that because I think Etsy's a really, I want to talk about your experience on there, but I'm wondering, I'm just curious, how did you feel when you left Anthropology? I'm sure you were felt liberated and excited, but were you scared at all, or?
Oh, I was definitely scared, and my husband was freelance also, so there were months, but it all seemed to work. I had these really great months, and he wouldn't have as much work that month, and then vice versa. So we definitely piggybacked each other, and I'm happy that we had that support. It would have been a lot harder if I didn't have that kind of back and forth, or I just would have had to be more responsible.
Yeah.
It did make a lot of money. We saved it and knew that possibly next month it wasn't going to be as good. But yeah, it was definitely scary. Mm-hmm. I won't lie about that. I look back from where I'm at now, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I could actually do that now because I'm so comfortable with where I'm at, but I was so uncomfortable with my career and where I was going that it wasn't that scary. It was like, it's better. Even though I don't have as much money and money was tight and it was a little bit nerve-wracking, I was so much happier in my life doing that. So, it happened at the right time.
Yeah. No, it's good to hear because that can give some hope to some people who might be in a job that they don't like. Because, I've always heard, or it's just our generation too, I guess, but, if you work for somebody, it's supposed to be more stable, right? But it's actually not necessarily the truth, right? You working for yourself actually might be more stable and more, certain.
That's funny because I did build up my business during this recession, essentially. The first trade show, wholesale show I did was in October of 2008, and this was right before the stock market crash and whatever was going on with all the banks and everything. And and my mom had worked for a company for 35 years and got laid off. And I was like, what? I have to say, I feel more secure knowing that I can generate money rather than working for somebody else, that I could be laid off at any moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and
I felt confident in that I had some skills to make money now.
That's true. And that's interesting. You say you're talking about your skills because I'm always a little bit jealous of creative people because I don't consider myself that creative. But I'm always curious, when did you actually discover your talents for creating things?
I always liked to create things as a child, even whether it was just painting on a pillow, little camp craft projects. It wasn't really encouraged in my family. My dad is he had a printing shop, but he was a science teacher and a police officer before that. My mom's an accountant. They didn't really get this sort of creative. I wanted to take art classes, and they said, well, your what is it called? Your elective classes. First you have to take Spanish, and you have to take keyboard because we used to learn keyboard.
Isn't that crazy?
Actually on a typewriter, word processor. I'm not that old, by the way.
No, but I had to take typewriter too. Yes.
So my senior year, the very last elective class I took, because I had taken everything they said I had to take, I took ceramics, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I didn't get very many art supplies as a kid, so when I would get a set of puffy paints, I wouldn't use them because I was afraid I wouldn't get any more, and then they dry out. I had this really nervous relationship with it. So anyways, that was the first time I had any sort of exposure to art. It was a ceramics class my senior year. I was 18 or 17, So when I went to college, which had already been determined by my parents that I would go to this liberal arts college, but it was one that was nursing or accounting. And I went there, and my elective I took was a two-dimensional design class. And I, again, was like, I love this. And I lasted a year there, and I left, and I went to FITM, which is the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. And by that point, my parents really got me. They understood, I'm not going to be an accountant. I'm not going to be a nurse. It wasn't right for me. and they really supported me. And so I went actually up through the fashion design ranks, and I worked for a clothing company for a long time as an assistant designer. So I think just all these things, I mean, I came to it really late in life, realizing that I had an eye for design and a talent with my, skilled in my hands. And so I actually, when I started working at Anthropologie, I was still in college, and I was doing their merchandising, which I loved. I thought that was so fun. One thing that happened, though, was I got promoted up in the ranks, and you sort of get promoted. Well, in my case, I got promoted out of my creative position and was a store manager, and I was doing a lot of, like, payroll and managing people. And then, so again, I realized, like, I'm not where I want to be. I didn't want to be an accountant. I didn't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a business manager or like, a manager of people. So, I changed course again. So I constantly remind myself of that. Like, when I make decisions to do things, like, what direction is this taking me in? Because it's so easy to get off path.
It is.
If you're thinking about money, or you know what I mean, or just opportunities that come to you, you have to really think about, is this what I want?
Yeah, no, that's very true. I love that. Because you didn't get off track, and it's interesting how Chocolate and Still came together because you're able to combine all those skills, the retail skill, your creative skill, merchandising, all that kind of stuff comes together pretty nicely.
I was just talking to the girl who works for me the other day, who actually works in Anthropologie as well. And I am so grateful for my time there. I, number one, learned about great customer service, merchandising, really the customer service thing, though. So I mean, and I loved it when I worked there as well. Like, I'm not knocking them at all. I really did enjoy my time. But by the end, I was like, I'm missing something.
Yeah.
But everything I've done has definitely given me some skill for what I'm doing now.
That's great. No, and that's wonderful. Because I was wondering, do you have any business background at all, or really? Okay, so how did you?
I by the seat of my pants.
Really?
and definitely more in the beginning, it was a lot of like Google searches. What do I need to do? I didn't really know very many people who own their own business, and I guess the way I started it was I was not really officially trying to start a business. I was just making jewelry and people were buying it, and this was lovely and wonderful, and so it did take me a while to kind of get down all of like the licenses I needed, business tax permits and all that kind of stuff. But now I am much more open and willing and quick to hire somebody who is better at a specific position than I am. I know my strengths. And I know with, like, the limited amount of time I have, like, for instance, I have a bookkeeper now, and it's that used to take me 4 hours. It takes them a half hour. I could have made more money making jewelry in those 4 hours.
It's true.
What I paid him in that half hour.
Yeah.
So now I feel very comfortable hiring people to do things that, number one, I don't want to do.
It's true, because you're creative and you want to create. And so that's probably where you have the most fun, I'm assuming. And so doing the bookkeeping aspects of your business doesn't sound fun to you. So why do it? Why it's nice to budget that in, especially at this point in your business, to be able to do that. Yeah.
And then I can just take the time and focus on actually like building relationships with stores. That's one thing, at least at the level that I'm at, the stores really want to talk to the designer and the artist. And I like doing that. I mean, that goes back to my history with Anthropologie. I like being with customers and talking about what they want and what they're interested in. I mean, it does inspire me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
But I don't want to do the shipping. I don't want to do the bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. I want to take that time to maybe go to museums and be inspired and make new stuff, and then have the time to make new things.
That's
and really think about the design aspect of things.
That's great. Well, I want to talk about sort of because you brought up Etsy. So was that the place you first decided to sell your pieces?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, for online, it was.
Yeah. And you said you started, which is interesting because it's so competitive now. And when it's unbelievable. I think I read, I guess in 2007 or 2008, which I guess you were already selling since 2006 with them, you said, but they had 80,000 sellers, but then in 2012 it's 400,000 or something.
Crazy. I don't even know what their numbers are. It's crazy, but yeah, no, I started selling in early 2007, and it was like that. It was very small, and it really launched my career because they did articles about me. They were very supportive of me. Landing your item on the front page was not so hard. I mean, I would be on the front page at least once a month.
Oh, wow.
So that was really good. But I don't think that it's impossible now to make it on Etsy. I think it's totally possible. And I mentor 2 other jewelers, and I just met with one yesterday. And, I believe wholeheartedly that the most important thing is branding. And that's the only, for Etsy and for everything else, it is the only way to set yourself apart is your branding. Like people, and that's another thing I learned from anthropology as well. Like you need to tell them who your customer is. It's probably them, but like basically where they vacation, what kind of food they like to cook, like they want to get the whole idea of this customer. And believe it or not, like that can come from your logo. Like it can come from all the little things that supports your collection, which is your branding, the colors you choose, the logo, the font, your Facebook fan page, what you're posting on there. If you're doing Pinterest, what you're posting on Pinterest. Like people get this idea and they want, as my friend said, who's a merchandiser, she said, you want to give people something to reach for, and then they come back and they want, and they want to see what else you have. They don't want to be the authority on what you're doing. They want you to be the authority, and that comes through in your branding.
Yeah, because I've
very consistent.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Because I've read like if you connect your story to your customers, that you'll make it. And then photography obviously is very important.
I'm still trying to get down, but that's an ever thing you're always working on.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking about branding, how did you actually differentiate yourself, you think, with your branding on Etsy?
I mean, my style of jewelry is very it's not serious, very cheerful.
Yeah.
And originally it was very nature driven, but now I've sort of branched out and it's just things that make us happy. And I'm not trying to make like a big statement, a big political statement or anything. Like it's just things that you look at and it maybe reminds you of a special time, a special person. Like I'm wearing them right now, but I have like a little quotes necklace, and this is like a pug. It's like there's just things you just they're fun. And it's like, oh, that makes me happy. So my colors are that way. They're like a light blue and orange. They're cheerful, not too serious, and everything I do is sort of like white backgrounds. I like it to be light, and so I think between that and like my Facebook fan page, the things that I post about, I do a lot with animals. So I donate pieces to different shelters, and they run auctions on Facebook. So I don't know. Like it's not. I don't feel like I have like a really clear business plan for that. It's always been intuitive, which I think you have to trust as well. Like if you're doing your designs, trust that your intuition for the colors that you use, it all sort of supports each other.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because I was drawn to your stuff because it's sort of quirky. It's feminine, but it's quirky. And I like that about you. And your branding says all of that all over your website. When you look at, and even when you look at your pieces, obviously, it's very fun. And I think you have a mustache on.
There's an old bird I had.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's really fun.
Thank you.
And sometimes your brand evolves over time. You might not have, I guess, that clear vision in the beginning, but it evolves based on what you start to make and what sells the most, that sort of thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, and even, I started my business about 6 years ago. Like even I have grown up, and I'm like sort of yearning to do like a collection that's a little bit more sophisticated. So if I do that still under the same umbrella of Chocolate and Steel, like that logo and branding has to make sense for the entire collection. So there are like little tweaks that I'm making on my design, my packaging design and whatnot, so it can still like encompass the whole thing.
That's great. Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about, Etsy, but also how I mean, you're everywhere. When I go to your website, you can be found online at a bunch of different places, and online, different websites. Your own website. You have Etsy. I know you have a partnership with another website, and then you have your wholesale business. So what's cool about you is you've been able to scale your jewelry business, which I think is hard for a lot of people. So can you talk about, I guess, from the beginning parts of how did you initially get people to your Etsy site? And then at what point in your evolution did you decide to do your e-commerce site? Because you had it in the beginning, but now it looks like, you've built that up back again.
Yeah. I definitely, the original website that I built is no longer, and that went directly just to Etsy. I built my Etsy business up, honestly, like that first year was all people who knew me, friends and family. My mom's like my best customer.
That's great.
Like, look at what my daughter made. And so, I mean, I do still remember the first order I got on Etsy that was somebody I didn't know. I was elated. Yeah. It was so awesome. I was like, I don't know this name. Like, I would get orders and be like, it would be like in my mom's town, I'm like, okay, my mom, helping me out here. But I mean, and not that I think that they didn't like the stuff. I think they did like it. It just was that it is hard to get your name out there.
Yeah.
So at some point in that first year, where I'm going to the park with my son and whatnot, I made the conscious decision that I'm no longer telling people I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm telling them I'm a work-at-home mom, and here's my card, and this is what I do, and yes, I made this. Like, I decided that I'm not going to be shy about it, I mean, why should I? I can sell other people's things so easily, and I obviously believe in what I'm doing, even though there's times where you're like, I don't know, like, I don't measure up to this person or that person, there's those things, doubts, but, people liked it, so, I had to go with that. So I did make a conscious decision that I am going to start telling people what I do, and not be ashamed of it. And that definitely worked, just getting the word out. And then friends of mine would, I was wearing this, and my friend loved it, and I sent her to your site. It was much easier once I had a website to sell things, obviously. I only built that website, I think it was at the beginning of last year.
Oh, so it's fairly new.
My website, chocolatandsteel.com. And I actually found the web designer on Etsy, believe it or not, and she's fantastic. Yeah, I'm really happy I went that route. I paid her like $1,500 to build the website. It's made much more than that in the year I've had it, so it's paid off my investment.
That's great.
And it's easy because I can add new product on there, and I really like Etsy, but you also have to pay a fee. And I was like, well, I'm getting a lot of this business on my own. I'd like it to go through my website. Right. But it's actually quite easy to run both, I find. I mean, there's a shipping, what do you call them? Like a shipping platform or something where all of my orders will go to. It's called ShipStation. So all the orders from my website, from Etsy, everywhere, go to that. And then I can just print off my shipping labels. So I don't really feel like I'm having to run a bunch of different stores as far as on the shipping end of it. So there's a lot. Recently I've been finding out about a lot of ways to make my business a little bit more streamlined. That's my goal for 2013, is to streamline my business so I'm not like running here and running there and doing this. It's like I'm shipping, and from all my stores. So it makes it, you can do a lot more.
Yeah, because you're still doing a lot of your shipping, even though I know you said you hired some help for that, but that's good.
But we do it here. I mean, I still have to do all the packaging and everything, printing off the shipping labels. We both are doing it together. So.
Yeah, that's hard. Well, on Etsy, how many items did you actually start with when you started selling? Like, how many different pieces of jewelry did you have?
Not much.
Yeah.
Maybe like 15 or so, and then I started working with metal, and that was.
Because you started with beads, right?
Yeah, I started with beads. The thing with that was that, everything was sort of one of a kind. If you sold it, then it was done. And then you'd have to create a new listing and take new pictures and everything. So that took a little bit more time. Once I started working with metal, I could post a picture of something, and when it sold, I could just relist it. I can make that again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you moved into metal, and then you started adding more pieces to your Etsy page.
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you, after, you went through all your friends and family, and your mom was selling free and all that kind of stuff, how did you get traffic to your Etsy page?
Well, I started getting, people were blogging about me. I did a lot of blogging myself at the time. I don't anymore, but so I had a lot of followers through my blog, and I think I got followers really just from visiting other blogs and commenting on them, on their blogs. I reached out to Design Sponge at one point. I'm a jeweler. She doesn't write about jewelry, or at least she didn't at that time. I don't think she still does.
Yeah.
But, I had reached out to her about like my apartment redo that I had done. I basically like had set up a little studio space in the corner, and I took before and after pictures and everything. And she featured it on Design Sponge, and then she did another feature on like a dining table that I made. And I realized that it at least in this craft sort of industry, it's not just about the item that you sell, the product that you sell, but really about like your whole thing. People want to know all about you and have that connection. So even though I'm selling jewelry, getting written up about my dining table that I made in my apartment remodel, well, not even remodel, redecorating, really helped. I mean, we're all nosy. We all go, God, what do they do?
That's true. Where do they work out of? Yeah.
Yeah, just creating a presence online was the way I did it. And I mean, I'll admit I'm not quite as good about it now. Well, with Facebook, it's much easier to just have your Facebook fan page and everything goes through there, and you can update people that way.
No, that's true.
Yeah, but I think it's still like a really viable way to get customers now is to be active on blogs. And there's so many design blogs now. There weren't as many back then, but there's so many. And through Instagram and Pinterest. I still do Pinterest and Instagram.
There's so many. I know, it boggles my mind. I mean, I'm on Pinterest, but I'm not a big user of it. But yeah, I need to utilize it a lot more. But with the blogs, how does that all work? So do you, when you're reaching out to other people who are running blogs, do you just send them a guest post, or were you sending them emails saying, hey, I'd like to be featured on your site? Or did they come approach you, or?
Yeah, no, I just emailed them.
Yeah.
Just being really genuine, really. Like, hey, I did this. I thought, your readers might really enjoy it. This was, and give them the information so they don't even, they'll email you back, but they don't need to email you back for more questions.
Right.
Basically, everything's right there. At one point I did like a sale in my Etsy shop, and I personally emailed each individual blog that, and they were big design blogs at the time, saying that, and I think like a lot of them were posting sales on Fridays. They would say like, oh, this website's having a sale or whatever. And I did that, and that was one of the best things I ever did. I got posted on like 5 different design blogs on the same day.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, and I ended up, I mean, at that time I was probably selling, I averaged like 2 pieces a day on Etsy, and then I got 100 orders that weekend.
Wow.
Yeah, it was huge.
That's great. Well, how do you repeat that? Did you try to really focus on making that repeatable so you can continue at that growth?
I haven't done sales like that anymore, where I've emailed the blogs. I definitely could.
Yeah.
Some things I think I have fallen out of habit with, but they're good ideas, and please take them and do them. Maybe I've become a little bit lazier with Facebook, that I can just put it on there. I'm like, hey guys, having a little sale. And I don't actually have sales very often. I do like to, I've worked hard to build respect for my collection, that people will want to spend $50 or $45 on a silver necklace, that and so every now and then I'll have a sale where it's like 20% off.
Yeah.
I don't like to do the huge 50% off sales. I think that people then wait for that.
That's true, and they won't buy any pieces.
Yeah.
Unless it's a holiday or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say that back then I was really trying to build my customer base, and it was a really good decision. And it did build my customer base and got me, new eyes looking at me.
Yeah.
But now there's like a certain level of success that I've had, that I do really want to maintain, the quality, that people understand the quality.
Yeah.
Because there is a perception. If you're paying $20 for something, you think it's not as valuable.
That's
as
true.
If you're paying $40, you know, and, you know, my stuff is valuable.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, like, discount it like that.
Yeah, and it's great to see you say that and have such passion behind it. It's wonderful. But for a price, because you bring that up, how did you go about setting your price? Because it sounds like you wanted to have more of a premium price when you first came out. But was that a scary thing for you when you were first starting to sell on Etsy? Like, how in the world do I value this jewelry I'm making?
Well, I definitely, when I first started selling on Etsy, my prices were lower because I had never even, like, considered doing wholesale, you know. And then I did eventually when I was like, wait, hold on a second. And I started reading a bit more about pricing formulas. I mean, I was kind of doing it based on, like, a formula that I had learned in the clothing industry. But, you know, I worked for a bigger company. It's different, you know. There were very specific prices. You've got, you know, 2 cents for your button, 5 cents for your zipper, you know, and then you're paying, you know, $3 for them to sew a shirt. So that's a very concrete price. So it was hard for me to figure out that formula for myself because I'm making it, you know, and I was like, well, do I factor in labor or is the profit my labor? You know, whatever's left over, is that my labor? So it took me a while. And I mean, my prices weren't very much different than they are now, although silver was a lot less expensive.
Yeah, you have to deal with those prices, of silver.
Than it is now. But
your personal.
I do my materials, which is a very concrete price. What my material is times 3 plus my labor. So I have figured out how much time it takes me to make a piece, and then divide that by what I would like to be making hourly.
Okay.
The way I figured that out was I said, okay, what would I want to be making yearly? Not as a business owner, but if I was just making jewelry, what do I want my annual salary to be? How many hours do I want to work a week? And then basically go back and figure out the hourly, which ends up being like $20 an hour, which if I was paying somebody else to do it would be less than that. So there's been some adjustment over time, which we discussed a little bit earlier, that, you know, now I have my pieces cast, so now I have a more concrete price on labor.
Right.
Anyway, so it's like I do materials times 3 plus labor, and then any sort of overhead, typically I add in $1.
Oh, okay, that's a good formula.
And then so that's my my cost, and then I multiply that by 2 for my wholesale. And then my wholesale times 2 to get my retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how you work that. That's good.
I work with 2 illustrators as well, so I also pay them royalties. So sometimes I have to factor that in. But anyway, so I basically, what ended up happening was I got a general idea of what my cost is and what my wholesale and what my retail should be. And then I look at the entire collection and I go, okay, if you look at this piece, does it look like it should be more than this piece, you know? And so then I sort of set the price at that, you know, knowing what my cost is, knowing that I'm, you know, obviously not losing money and that I'm making a decent profit for everything. But, you know, you do have to, the perception is important as well when you're pricing things out.
No, for sure. And did you ever look at competitors' pricing to compare yours, or?
Yeah,
a little bit.
A little bit. I don't look at it on Etsy though, because I think that that's not realistic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if what you want to do is sell on Etsy, you don't want to have a separate website and you don't want to do wholesale, then I guess you could look at that. But I do some necklaces that just have, it's a little square with a saying on it or a word, like je t'aime, for instance. Quite simple. And I look on Etsy and I'll see them for $15 and mine's $40, and I still sell them. People, I think they understand there's a difference in quality. Yeah. It's, you know, a bit more of a substantial piece. And so, I think that you don't have to look at the fact that other people are selling that thing for $15.
Yeah. I think it's great that you're setting your prices high, because I think us as women, we tend to, like, devalue some of our work. And we're like, really? Somebody's going to pay for this? You know, something that I made? And you're actually saying, I'm not going to even be cheap about it. I'm actually going to charge a nice price and pay myself somewhat nicely, you know, for my work and my time and my designs.
I think that's another benefit of me working at Anthropologie. I go in there and I go, well, hold on a second. I'm charging this for that, and I'm charging this for that. Like, you know, so I think that sometimes Etsy can be deceiving when you're looking at price.
Okay.
And And certainly now that I'm in stores, it's a bit of a different ballgame,
Mm-hmm.
because I can walk into a store and see that my stuff fits in nicely, my price point is right compared to the other things that they do, so.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that I don't look at a competition. I do, and I look at some like bigger brands, not so much at Etsy, because it's a mixture of hobbyists, and I don't want to be a hobby. I don't want to be a hobbyist. I want to have a business. So I'm not going to compare myself to them.
Yeah, and what an interesting thing to say, because it's hard to turn that hobby into a business and actually say it to yourself. Yes. This is not a hobby for me anymore. This is a full-time business, and I got to treat it like that. And so even just saying it and comparing yourself to people that are not doing this for a hobby is a good step to take.
Yeah, and and for someone who's been on Etsy for a long time, I've seen the people who have charged more for their products, and they're now, kind of big brands. I see them at trade shows, and they're doing very well for themselves. So there is the fact that it's much more, you have a more sustainable business.
Yeah.
When you're actually making money, and your customers trust you, when you're charging a certain amount for your items. If you're charging $15 for the same thing I'm charging $40 for, if a customer has a problem, something's wrong with this, they go, well, you paid $15. What do you expect?
Yeah.
They could easily come back and say that.
That's
I'm going to stand behind my product 100%.
That's right. And you learned that from anthropology too, right? All that good customer service stuff.
So much so.
I know. Well, so if somebody wants to do kind of following your footsteps around the wholesale part, what can you talk a little bit about how you started wholesaling and what challenges you've had doing that?
Yeah. The first wholesale show I did was the Buyer's Market in Philadelphia, and I'm part of an Etsy team called Etsy Metal Clay, and they invited us there at a discounted rate if our team members wanted to go and share a booth together. And there were, I think, 5 of us. Yeah, 5 of us, and said, okay, we'll do it. It was crazy. It was so much fun too. We'd never met in real life because it's a team online, and these were wonderful women. So I was able to sort of test it out without putting in too much of the financial commitment. I mean, I want to say overall I spent about $1,000 on doing this show. But I got, a good reaction from customers, and I made a profit there, which was really all I wanted to just come back at least breaking even.
Right.
I didn't just break even, but at least that, and take it as a learning experience. And I did. And, a lot of customers said they liked the pieces. Some of them, my prices were too high. My jewelry is simple, so for them, they're looking at their profit margins, and my prices were too high. So I took some of that stuff into consideration. And what I did, instead of changing my prices, was actually making some of the pieces a little bit lighter weight. So I could, instead of changing my profit, I lowered some of the prices by making them a little bit lighter weight. So my cost was less.
Cost went down. Yeah.
And I'm still in that same, and the thing is I'm targeting the gift market. And gift, you need to be, for what I do, it needs to be $50 or less.
Yeah.
So it was good. I mean, and I was not offended by anything anybody said. That this is, because it was so different than I've always done craft shows. And someone says, "This is so cute." You go, "Oh, thanks." It's not like that at trade shows. You have to say, "Yes, it is. I love this about it. What do you love about it?" It's very
good
different.
advice.
Because they're not saying it because they love it. They're saying it because it fits within their store.
Right.
It's much more like of a business response to what you're doing. It's not an emotional one. And that was so helpful for me. And somebody told me that at the beginning of that show. Don't be offended. They're not making a judgment about you. They're talking about how it fits within their store. And ask them questions. If they say it's not for them, ask them why. You're not being irritating. It is gathering information.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot at that show, just and realizing, okay, what my price point needs to be for the market that I'm targeting. And then we talked about some packaging. I didn't really have a great wholesale packaging plan. I was just basically putting little jewelry tags on the end that I was making that, they talked about having actual cards with an artist bio on the back. That's for a lot of stores nowadays, it's so important to, if you are eco-friendly and you are handcrafted and United States. Like, those are huge selling points. So, yeah, I learned a lot about that. So, I mean, that first show was a really great experience. And then from there, I've just started doing shows. You know, I learned how to make a better line sheet after doing that show. But I think the thing is, you have to just act. You have to do it. You can't overthink things and then become inactive. You know, this isn't good enough yet. I need to perfect it. Like, you need to just send it out there, make your edits, and send it out again. You know?
Yeah, that's true. And get feedback every time you go to a different show. Yeah.
And take it in and digest it. And then for stores that aren't really your target audience, you just say, okay, thank you, and set it aside. You know, like, you don't have to adjust everything you do based on what people say.
No, that's true.
So, sorry. So it was trade shows, but also, at some point, people just started contacting me through Etsy as well. Stores did. Oh, I found you on Etsy. Do you do wholesale? So then I said, okay, I need to make sure that in my profile it says, wholesale orders welcome. Please contact me with my email address there. And that brought in a lot of customers.
Well, that's great. That's like a pleasant surprise, I'm sure. Of extra income.
I know they've been talking about having like a wholesale section to their website, but I feel like I heard about that.
That would be great if it would make sense that they would do that for sure.
Yeah.
So where's the majority of your sales coming in through then now? Is it your website? Is it Etsy? Is it your wholesale?
It's wholesale.
Oh, it is wholesale.
Yeah. And I only do 2 shows a year.
Wow.
In New York. Yeah. And because of some of the stores I'm in and they have websites, other stores shop their websites. Oh, I found you on this store's website, and then they get in touch. So once you kind of get the ball rolling, it rolls a little faster.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
But yeah, so I mean, most of my stores are actually on the East Coast because I do this New York show. I just haven't found a good wholesale show on the West Coast. I've done other ones and they haven't been great out here.
Yeah.
So, and then just, I do sometimes look at my competitors, or not necessarily competitors, but people that I think we should be in the same store. And I'll look at their store lists and find the email addresses for those stores and send them an email, a line sheet, and some pictures and an introduction. Always very personal though. I keep it very personal. I have like an ongoing list for doing those like email marketing. What are those like marketing emails? And I never send them out. I just like to do the get in touch one by one.
Oh, right. Instead of building your email list, you mean, of certain clients? I do
build my email list. I just don't use it very often, I like to just do the one single email to a person and then follow up and call them. And I've had better luck with that.
Yeah, that's great. And that's your style. So that's good. No, that's wonderful. I know we talked before when we were talking about, your revenue and such, and you said that last year was like one of your best years ever. Yeah. So do you owe that to anything? Is there something you're doing different, better?
I think that it's brand recognition at this point, honestly. I mean, I think part of it is because my wholesale accounts have gotten so much larger in more stores, that even sometimes the customers that go to those stores become repeat customer. They come and they try and find me to see other things, new things. So yeah, I had a really great holiday season, and it was really great for retail. It was great for wholesale.
Yeah,
I did a wholesale show in August, which my sales were up 400% from the year before at that particular show. So I was super excited, and most of those people I shipped in like September, October, and then I got a spike in retail November and December, which typically happens, but it was much more than it had been in the past. So I think it's starting to become brand recognition. That
That's awesome.
You're seeing me in a store, and then you're seeing me online.
Yeah. And they're like, wow, she's everywhere. And you're even selling international now, right? On a website?
Well, I've always sold on Wanda.
Oh, okay.
I started a long time ago, maybe a year after Etsy, when they were very new. I was willing to try anything.
Hey, that's how you do it.
Yeah, some things I've gotten rid of and some things I've kept. So I like Wanda. I'm not too active there, but every now and then I get a nice little sales in Italy, and I'm like,
oh, that's great. It is really cool.
Yeah, I just realized too, the other thing that I think helped my sales last year, it helped them spike, is that I've been working with 2 illustrators for a while, that we launched a new collection, and they also, in the time that we've been doing our collaborations, have gotten much more brand recognition as well.
Cool.
So I'm getting a lot of traffic from them. So one of them is Gemma Corral, and she's in England, and she's been picked. Like, her illustrations are in Urban Outfitters, and she's doing a book, and so people find me through her. She has, like, on her website, she'll have like my illustrations on jewelry, and it goes directly to, when you click on it, it goes to my Etsy site. And then with Boy Girl Party, who's in San Diego, and I've worked with her like probably 2 years after I started my business. We started working together, and she's always been very popular, but even more so now. And she's just launched a book, and so I think these collaborations have been really good for me, getting some more traffic, and people also just feeling confident in the stuff that I do, because if they trust those illustrators, they know they're not going to choose a jeweler who you can't trust.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how'd you go about getting these illustrators? What?
Well, the first one was Susie, and she, Boy Girl Party in San Diego. I keep going like this because San Diego's as I'm looking out my window.
That's funny.
It's funny because when I was building that first website, and I was looking around at other websites that I liked, and I bookmarked a few, I kept going back to hers. I really liked her style. I really loved her website. And so I was just looking at it for sort of how she did her layout and whatnot. And it was like January 1st or something like that. And I get like a notice that I had a sale on Etsy, and I look, and it was her. She had bought one of my necklaces, and I was like flipping out. She was like lovely to me, I'd been like looking at her website for inspiration, and I thought, oh my gosh, it was either like New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, and I was like, this is a sign. This is going to be the best year ever. And I decided I'm not going to be shy about it, and I emailed her back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you're buying one of my pieces. I really respect your work, and if you ever want to collaborate, I never had done that before. I'd never collaborated with anyone. I'd be really, happy to. And she was like, I would love to. And we started that. So we've been working together for almost 5 years.
Wow, that's a great collaboration.
Doing illustrations, yeah. And then Gemma reached out to me, the one who's in England. She reached out to me when she saw that I was doing a collaboration with Susie. And a few years later, seeing that there's someone out there who could do something with her illustrations. And that's been a really good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, yeah. I think you can't be afraid of no.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never know unless you ask. So.
That's true. Don't take it personal.
With collaborations, I mean, what you end up doing is bringing everybody's fans together,
Yes. So, it's a win-win for sure.
Really.
Well, before we were talking, I just want to show people, you're in your studio right now, right? Can you show us your studio? I want to see.
Sure.
Here is Christine Street's studio where she works.
This is my messy little drafting table.
Okay.
Make all the models on.
All right.
And then
this is where it all happens.
I use a kiln for firing pieces. There's my little kiln.
Okay.
The tumbler, and then this is where we do like shipping and packaging. It has a nice light there, so I do photography there as well.
Okay.
And this is where everything gets thrown into, so it looks, well, not that my office looks clean at all, but things are sort of clean. And of course, you can see the little lock on the door there, so my children don't get into it.
Good idea to put a lock on that. Okay.
Yes, and then this, I'm like trying to do this sideways. This is my favorite thing, this tiny little shelves, or little drawers.
Oh, interesting.
Holds pretty much everything that I need, so all my tools.
Speaking of being a mom, so how have you found your rhythm in being a mom, business owner, and working from home and trying to build a full-time income so you can continue to do this? How's that been for you?
Oh, there's been many incarnations, really. Since, I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old now. So when I started doing this when my 7-year-old was almost a year, so that was actually quite easy because there was just one child, and I'd get up in the morning, and as he's eating breakfast, I would check my emails and whatnot, and then I think he would watch the Mickey Mouse or something, like a half-hour show, and so I was able to print out orders for the day and whatnot, and then we'd go to the park, we'd come back, he'd take his nap, I'd work then we'd hang out, and then I'd work at night, and which was fine because I've always been a night owl, so that was the way I did it then. It's definitely changed. Having to was a little bit harder. But my older one's in school now, which still means like I have to go pick him up, take him to school, pick him up, do the activities and whatnot. So the last 2 years have been a little bit more challenging of, working when my daughter's napping or having a babysitter. I had a babysitter twice a week, so I could work during those times. And like at one point, the babysitter was here, taking care of her. Well, yeah, I mean, when she was like an infant, she basically would just hang out with us in here and the girl who works for me. And then I had a babysitter for 2 days a week, and then I started taking her to a friend's house, and we shared a babysitter, so she was out of here for the 2 days. And then 2 weeks ago, she started daycare, so she's there 3.5 days now. So I think it's just through being flexible and the many different incarnations of how to make it all work. But it's actually, with her being in daycare 3.5 weeks, is so easy now. I mean, just having the 3.5 days that I'm dedicated, I get so much done. I mean, I think that's the thing about being a mom.
Oh, yeah.
You can do so much with a little bit of time.
Oh, it's true.
So if there's things that I still have to finish up, I still do it at night. But I'm trying really hard to get it done during the day so I don't have to work at night, actually spend time with my husband and even, just do things for the love of it, not because I need to get something done, but I just want to draw just because I want to draw, or, look through magazines. I mean, that's the beauty about having a creative job. It's like all that stuff is technically still work.
That's true.
And then about a year ago, I made the commitment to not work on weekends, which is a hard thing on Etsy because people will send you combos and typically expect a pretty quick answer. And sometimes I'll reply to Etsy combos, but I won't work on weekends.
Oh,
it was just getting too hard to, like, I just felt like I'm especially with cell phones now where you can email, I'm like constantly like this, and I just want to be with my kid. I want to be present. If I'm sending them away, my son's at school and my daughter's at daycare, when I'm with them, I want to be with them.
It's true.
So, and I found that my customers respect that. I set boundaries. Like when I have a customer who says, I'm ordering this, it's like a Friday at 2 p.m., can you send it tomorrow? Like, actually, I can't. I don't work on weekends, but it'll go out first thing Monday, and people respect that. I don't have any issues with that.
That's good.
I mean, most online stores don't ship on weekends. I mean, not like Amazon, but, like smaller mom and pop type things. You don't work weekends,
So why should you? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And I just was like, I've made all these sacrifices so I can have this flexibility to be with my kids. So I actually want to be with them when I'm with them,
That's so sweet. That's wonderful. I think that's great. And I know how you feel because I've had that guilt too where, I'm on my phone, I'm just looking at email, and my daughter just the other day was like, Mom, don't look at your phone, listen to me. And I was like, oh. And so I removed the phone out of the room, and I'm like, you're right, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So they'll tell us, right?
Absolutely. I know.
Yeah, it's very true. Well, one last thing. If you could go back to the time when you started your business, and I know it's been sort of an evolution, but kind of around 2007 timeframe when you decided you were going to take this full time, what advice would you give yourself now if you could talk to yourself?
What advice? I think I would have I don't know if I would actually do anything different. Really like the evolution of how it all happened, and because I don't have a business background, so like coming into it with like a business plan made no sense to me. I didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't know what my end goal was. So I don't know that I would have necessarily done anything different. I think maybe the only advice I would give myself is to be aware or be committed to taking time for myself, creative time. As things got busy and I had less time to actually work, it ends up becoming a lot of just like getting things done and not really like creating new work, and you'll hit a wall at some point. Your business will hit a wall if you're not fresh, basically. So, I mean, that's having a little bit more time now with my daughter in daycare. I'm so committed to that one day a week I'm not in my studio. I'm actually out doing something, going to a museum with my sketchbook, and just letting the ideas flow, and not getting too bogged down with, the things that need to be done, the paperwork and whatnot, and just hiring somebody to do those things.
Yeah, the things that you didn't like in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, actually, maybe that would be my advice, is to not be hesitant to hire somebody. If you're not good at photography, hire somebody. I actually enjoy photography, so that was, but getting advice and opinions on maybe like branding or web design. Yeah, because I as you know, like I tried to do everything myself, which was basically a constraint of my budget at the time. But maybe taking some of that income that was coming in, setting it aside, and investing back in the business.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect advice. Because and for somebody that's just like on the fence for starting a company, kind of if they are kind of the Anthropologie employee right now, to use your example, what would you tell them to try to get started?
Try to get started. I would say, just keep making the stuff and talk about it. Don't be ashamed to tell people what you're doing. If you're ashamed, then you probably need a little bit more time of like working on the thing that you're doing. You need to be really proud about what you're doing and talk about it. I mean, even though like people will, I was going to say, no one's going to sell your stuff. You have to sell it. That's not true. People will try and help you and sell your stuff, but you have to convince them that it's worth it, that you're in this, that you're committed to it. To somebody who wants to start a business is to have a really clear idea of who you want your customer to be. And there, overall it can be broad, but there should be like at the core of that, you should know sort of their age range and what they do and what they like, what their style is. I mean, I guess that's why a lot of designers have a muse, like it's easy. Like I find it so easy to make. Some of the best pieces, in my opinion, that I've made have been like gifts for my sister and my mom, and then someone sees it, I want that, and then I'll list it on Etsy, and then it goes from there. But those are the ones that there's been a lot of heart and soul put into it, and I had sort of this muse. I knew what their likes were, where they go on vacation and whatnot. So yeah, I think knowing who your customer is very important, and I still feel like in a way I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah.
Because it's evolved, it's changed, and as I've gotten older, I want to kind of hit my audience a little bit more than or my how old am I? My 36-year-old audience as opposed to my 29-year-old audience. We do change a little bit. So, and a lot of my friends are in their 40s, so so I have all these different ideas of what I want to do. So it does evolve, but maybe just having like a core idea.
That's very true. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. And for anybody who wants to go visit her site, it's at chocolateandsteel.com. And you can go see Christine's work there. She's always adding new pieces. I know rings is a really big, you have a really big collection of rings as well, and necklaces. And you're wearing a piece today. So go out and visit her site. And thank you for all the inspiration. Show it again. Where's the ring?
This one's not on my site, though. This is just like a model. Can you see it?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, that's really pretty. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again, and I'll be posting this for everybody to see.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.